I never imagined I would reach a point in my life where the silence of my own home felt louder than any argument I had ever been afraid of. I didn't set out to tell this story. I didn't plan to sit alone with my thoughts long enough for them to turn into a confession. But sometimes the weight inside you grows so heavy that the only thing left to do is set it down somewhere. And tonight, that somewhere happens to be here. It started the way most tragedies do, quietly. Soft changes that didn't feel like changes at first. A late night here, a missed call there, the slow fading of a voice that once felt familiar. People don't tell you that betrayal doesn't slam into your life. It trickles in. It seeps under the door. It becomes normal before you even know something is wrong. I used to tell myself he was tired. That work was stressful. That life was simply grinding us down the way it grinds down everyone eventually. I didn't want to question him because questioning felt like doubting, and doubting felt like failing. So I accepted the excuses. I swallowed them whole. I told myself everything was okay even when something deep inside whispered that it wasn't. One small detail changed everything: his shirt. One evening, he walked in with a button misaligned. Just one. Just slightly. But I had spent years watching him dress. Years noticing the smallest things without even realizing it. That single crooked button hit me like a quiet alarm bell. Something invisible shifted inside me. Something uncomfortable. Something cold. I brushed it off at first. Told myself I was imagining things. And yet the uneasiness stayed, settling inside me like dust on furniture no one touches anymore. I didn't want to admit the truth because the truth felt like a storm I wasn't ready to survive. So I kept sweeping the discomfort aside, hoping it would disappear if I ignored it long enough. Then came the message. The one I wasn't meant to see. His phone lit up with words that didn't belong in our life. Are the kids coming this weekend? Kids. A word that held more pain for me than any stranger could have known. I stared at it until everything around me blurred, until I felt like I was drowning in a wave I couldn't push back. We had been trying for years. Doctors, tests, heartbreaks, a cycle that carved spaces inside me I didn't know could hurt. To see that word on his phone was like being hit from the inside. A kind of pain that doesn't make a sound but still manages to tear you apart. I opened the conversation. I wish I hadn't. I wish ignorance were still something I could choose. Photos. Laughter. A child who looked like him. A woman beside him who looked like she had never been left alone at night wondering why the man she loved didn't come home on time. I remember my hands shaking. The phone slipping. The world narrowing to a single point of disbelief. There's no manual for this moment. No preparation. No warning. Just a quiet breaking inside your chest that feels like it will never stop. He was still in the shower. Still humming a song. Still living as if nothing in the world was unraveling. I wanted to scream. I wanted to confront him. But something inside me said not yet. Something told me to wait. Not because I feared him, but because I feared what I didn't know yet. Instinct whispered that the truth was bigger than this one moment. I pretended nothing was wrong. I didn't sleep that night. My mind kept replaying the message. The photos. The lies that suddenly didn't feel like lies anymore. They felt like entire chapters of my life rewritten without my permission. A few days later, he forgot his phone at home. For the first time ever, I knew this wasn't an accident. Life doesn't hand you keys like this unless it's time to open a door you've spent too long knocking on. The phone rang at noon. A school calling, asking if her father would attend a meeting. My heart dropped so fast it felt like the ground disappeared under me. Lily. His daughter. His last name. His blood. His secret. And in that moment, all the pieces clicked together. Every late night. Every excuse. Every shift in his voice when he spoke to someone else. It all fell into a pattern I should have seen sooner but refused to. When he came home, I didn't yell. Rage wasn't the point anymore. The truth was, I handed him the phone. Asked a simple question with a voice so steady it didn't feel like mine. Who is Lily? Silence answered before he did. Fear flashed in his eyes, not fear of losing me, but fear of being caught. He confessed. First in fragments, then in whole pieces that shattered everything I thought I knew. 2 children. 7 years. A life built before mine. A relationship he never ended. A woman he never left. A love he never gave me, not truly. Not deeply. Not in the way he gave her. He said he married me because I was acceptable. Presentable. A life his parents would approve of. A clean image. A stable home. Words that felt more like labels than reasons. It was like hearing my own existence reduced to a social requirement, a checkbox he needed to tick to keep his world balanced. Then came the financial truth. Our savings drained. Our accounts emptied. Money funneled quietly into a life I didn't know existed. Rent for another home. School fees for other children. Trips. Groceries. Gifts. All funded by a marriage built on half-truths and full lies. I confronted him, and he didn't deny it. He justified it. They're my kids. As if my life, my dreams, my sacrifices, my future were somehow less valid. As if being his wife made me a resource rather than a partner. And then came the final betrayal, the reason he married me at all. His parents had pressured him. Forced him to choose a respectable woman for their family name. He needed stability for a custody arrangement. A clean address. A safe environment. Someone responsible, reliable, believable. Someone like me. He hadn't chosen me out of love. He'd chosen me out of convenience. I wasn't a partner. I was protection. A shield he used to appear like the man he wished he could pretend to be. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that name, Claire, floating in the darkness like it had always been there, just waiting to be found. Daniel's breathing beside me was steady, peaceful. He looked innocent, untroubled. And for a strange, fleeting second, I felt jealous of his dreams. How could he sleep so easily, knowing the truth that now kept me awake? Morning came slow, and I watched the light crawl across the floorboards of our bedroom. 15 years. 15 years of coffee together, vacations, birthdays, little fights about nothing. I thought I knew every inch of our history. But now there was a piece missing, a whole chapter I'd never been allowed to read. When Daniel left for work, I made his coffee like I always do. But my hands shook as I set the cup down on the counter. I couldn't stop staring at the back of his head, wondering what other memories were buried behind that calm face. When the door closed behind him, I opened the drawer again. The letter was still there. I read it all over again, this time slower, every line cutting deeper than before. It wasn't written out of guilt, it was written out of fear. Fear that if he told me who he had been before me, I'd see him differently. And he was right. Because now, I couldn't look at him the same way anymore. It wasn't that I doubted his love for me. It was that I suddenly realized I had built our marriage on the version of him that he wanted me to know. Not the full one. Not the man who'd once promised his life to someone else. I thought about the day we met, at a friend's wedding, of all places. He was quiet back then, kind of distant. I remember thinking it was shyness. Maybe it was just grief, still living in him. Maybe I fell in love with a man who was still healing. And I never noticed because I was too busy loving him to see his scars. All morning, I tried to convince myself not to confront him. What good would it do? He wrote that letter 15 years ago, before our life, our children, our memories. But it was impossible to pretend it didn't matter. Because the moment you find out your partner has a secret, every little thing starts to feel suspicious, even the things that once felt normal. By noon, I couldn't stand it anymore. I called his office just to hear his voice. He picked up on the second ring, cheerful as always. "Hey, love. Everything okay?" I froze. My throat went dry. For a second, I almost told him. Almost said, "I found it." I know. But instead, I said, "Yes. I just wanted to hear you." He laughed softly. "That's sweet. I'll be home early today. Let's go out for dinner." Dinner. As if life was normal. As if nothing had changed. When he came home that evening, I had the letter in my pocket again. He smiled the same way, kissed my cheek, asked about my day. I smiled back. But inside, my heart was pounding so hard it hurt. I wanted to throw the letter on the table and yell, "Tell me who she was." But I couldn't. Because even though I wanted the truth, I was terrified of what it might do to us. So I waited. We went to dinner like nothing was wrong. He talked about work, about our son's college plans. And I nodded, laughed in all the right places. But the words "her name was Claire" repeated in my head like a song I couldn't turn off. When we got home, he poured himself a drink and asked me to join him on the porch. The night was calm. The sky was heavy with stars. He looked at me, quiet for a moment, and said, "You've been distant lately. Is something wrong?" And there it was. The moment. My chance to ask. I looked at him, holding that glass of whiskey, his eyes soft and worried. And I almost broke. But I didn't ask. I just said, "No. I'm fine." And for the first time in our marriage, that was a lie. Later that night, I stood by our bed, watching him sleep again. I whispered the name Claire under my breath, like it might wake her ghost. Or maybe wake him. I didn't know which one scared me more. That's when I made a decision. If I couldn't ask him, I'd find the truth myself. I started like detectives do in movies, quietly, with small steps that felt ridiculous and invasive. I told myself I wasn't spying. I was simply looking for context. For facts. for something to replace the hollow that name had left inside me. But the truth is, curiosity feels different when it's wrapped in the things you love. It feels like a betrayal and like survival at the same time. The first place I looked was the attic. Not because I expected to find answers up there, just because it's where we stored things we didn't want to see: old boxes, forgotten gifts, a suitcase with a hole. Daniel kept an old cardboard box labeled Memories. Slipping it open felt like opening a small door to his past. Inside were ticket stubs, Polaroids, an old wristwatch, and a folded program from a play. Tucked beneath all of that was a photograph. A woman with kind eyes, hair caught in motion, smiling like she just said something clever. I cupped the photo in my hands like it might crumble. On the back someone had written, in a messy hand I suddenly recognized, Claire, April 2009. There was a heaviness to seeing her face. It wasn't that she looked like me, or unlike me. She just existed in a way that made the timeline of our life feel less linear. It made me wonder how much of what I thought of as then and now was really a tangle of overlapping yesterdays. I began to search in other small ways. I asked casual questions to the barista who'd worked at the coffee shop near Daniel's office when he was younger. I pretended to need the exact memory of a place he'd loved and hoped the right name would surface. People are generous with memories of others. Sometimes they hand them to strangers on a tray like coffee. From the barista, I learned that Daniel had played guitar in a small band once. From a woman at the library, I learned he'd volunteered at a hospice for a short time. These pieces weren't proof, but they painted a picture: restless, artistic, patient, prone to silence. Then I found something else, less accidental. An old email account I didn't know he used anymore, tucked away in the settings of his laptop, an address that hadn't been updated in years. I hesitated before I clicked. I knew the moral terrain I was stepping on, and I also knew once you crack a window into someone's private life, it's hard to close it again. But I told myself we were partners and that our life had been built on shared trust. How much of that trust had been an illusion of convenience? There were so few messages. The account was like a quiet room where only a few voices had ever spoken. Most of them were unsent drafts, beginnings of letters, jagged thoughts he never mailed. One subject line made my breath hitch: to Claire, if I could tell you. The draft itself was a paragraph he never sent. It read like a man trying not to drown in memory, each sentence a lifeline. I still find your sweater in the laundry sometimes, and I almost put it to my face just to feel the shape of you. I know that's insane. I know you're gone. I know that. But some nights the house is loud with your absence. The rawness in his words struck me in a way nothing else had. Not anger. Not betrayal. Just the ache of a wound that never quite closed. There was an honesty to it that made me ache, too. I hated that piece of him with a ferocity that surprised me, not because he loved someone before me, but because he had built a private shrine in his mind and never let me in. I started to see traces of Claire everywhere. A theater ticket with her name in the margins. A receipt for flowers bought in April. A typed poem with lines about roads that never end, something he'd left on the kitchen counter once and I'd assumed was his. Looking back, it felt like the whole marriage had been built on a series of shadows, and I had only just noticed the corners. I tried to remember all the small oddities in our years together. The way he flinched at sudden noises, the quiet pauses in conversation when some old memory gently intruded. The way he would sometimes stare out a window as if listening to something only he could hear. I wondered now how often he had been thinking of someone else in those silences, and whether those thoughts were ghosts or lifelines. One afternoon I met Claire's name for real in the world outside our house. I was at the supermarket, standing in the cereal aisle, when I overheard a woman ask the cashier if they'd found a donation envelope from a hospice fundraiser. "It was from Claire Thompson," she said. My body turned the way a compass needle does toward a magnet. Claire Thompson. The name felt suddenly specific, painfully human. I followed that breadcrumb. The hospice was small and quiet, a place with sun-filled rooms and a garden with a bench that looked out onto the street. They were kind when I asked about donations, and eventually a nurse, older, careful, offered me a name. "Claire Thompson," she said. "She volunteered here years ago. She was kind. She read to the patients and brought cookies. There was an accident. Oh, it was terrible." Her voice softened like a blanket. The nurse's eyes carried a memory that seemed to reach into a deeper place than the paperwork ever could. It took what felt like forever to ask the direct question, how did she die? And when she told me, the word accident didn't make the hurt any lighter. It made it more real. A car. A wrong turn. A life folded into silence. The nurse then pulled out a small photograph from a drawer, a picture of Claire standing in that same garden, holding a stack of books. She handed it to me, and my fingers shook in a strange, private grief. I wasn't grieving for Claire exactly. I was grieving for a version of my husband who had loved deeply and then learned to live with a hole that shaped him. When I went home with the photograph, I laid it beside the one I'd found in the attic. They matched, bearing the same smile. I sat with them both on my lap, feeling like the third person in a conversation between two ghosts. The thought that wouldn't leave me was simple and terrifying. Daniel carried her like a second life inside of him. He had loved her, lost her, and then loved me. How did the mind hold one love without betraying the next? That evening I decided to confront him. Not with accusation, but with questions, soft ones, like gentle probes to the scar. I wanted to understand, to hear him say the things written in the old letters, but spoken by his real voice. I wanted to know how he had moved forward, what steps he had taken to put one life beside another without letting either collapse. When he walked in, he looked at me in that way that used to make my knees feel weak, a tender bewilderment, as if he recognized a part of me he hadn't seen in years. I told him I'd been cleaning and found a letter, and then, because I couldn't stop myself, I admitted I'd seen a photo in the attic, and a draft in an old email. I watched his face become a landscape of memories. He didn't look surprised. He looked tired in a way I had never seen outside of those rare, lonely nights. "Did you read everything?" he asked quietly. "Yes," I said. "I read it all." He sat down hard in the chair by the table and folded his hands. The room felt suddenly small and full of space at once. He looked like a man gathering himself. "I thought I had buried it," he said. "I thought I had set it down and that it would stay where I put it. I wanted to be a different person for you, and for our children." His voice was raw. He told me more than I had hoped or feared. About Claire in detail, her laugh, the way she bought extra tea for everyone at the hospice, how she told jokes like she was practicing kindness. About the accident that took her, about how the world rewrote his days, making them longer and colder. He spoke about the letter he wrote the night before our wedding, the one I'd found, how he folded it and tucked it away because he thought it would spare me the burden of his grief. I thought if I didn't speak her name, he said, I could live untainted by it. I could give you a clean life. I remember the room tilting when he said it. A clean life. As if life could be a cloth washed and ironed and kept free of the wrinkles of the past. I thought of all the wrinkles we had smoothed together, all the uneven hems we'd stitched by hand through arguments and reconciliations. His idea of sparing me felt like a betrayal in its own right, not because he loved her first, but because he had withheld the story that made him whole. There were moments when his words sliced through me, and moments when they mended like gentle hands working a seam. He didn't ask for forgiveness in the way I expected. He asked for understanding. And perhaps that was the truest thing he could ask for. To be understood, not judged. That night, after we had talked for hours and the children slept, I lay awake thinking about what it meant to love someone who had held another in such a tender, terrible way. I thought about the idea that sometimes people think they can protect those they love by shielding them from pain. But protection built on silence is a subtle cruelty. It creates an invisible wall in a house that was supposed to be open. Still, I could hear the tremor in his voice when he spoke of Claire's favorite sweater, the way he would sometimes fold it and place it on the chair just to remember her shape. He'd kept pieces of her life as if they were relics, sacred in a private cathedral. And in doing so, he had made a part of himself inaccessible to me. I told him I needed time. I needed to look at his things, to ask others who knew him, to stitch the pieces together into something that felt true. He nodded, understanding, and then reached across the table and took my hand like he had done on our first date. His fingers were warm. They had held me through 10,000 small things. How could I reconcile the man who held my hand now with the man who had once promised his life to someone else? The work, I realized then, would not be to choose between love for a past and love for a present. It would be to build a way for both to exist without claiming the other as less. But I was not prepared for how much of me would resist. For how the knowledge of that old love clawed at my sense of place in his life. As I lay in bed that night, I whispered Claire's name into the darkness. It felt like an offering. It felt like a test. The house breathed around us. Outside, someone laughed, a car passed, a dog barked. Inside, between the two of us, there was now a new rhythm, awkward, searching, and dangerously honest. I didn't yet know if honesty would heal or break us. But for the first time since finding the letter, I felt the edges of something opening, not a wound, but a possibility. After our long talk, I felt less like an intruder and more like a guest in a house whose rooms I'd only thought I knew. Daniel slept with the window cracked open that night. The house smelled faintly of the lemon cleaner he used and the book on his nightstand. In the morning, before the children woke, I made a plan that felt both reasonable and reckless. I would learn who Claire had been by finding the fragments of her life that still existed in the world. Not to replace her, not to punish him, but to understand the shape of what had come before me. I started with small things. I went back to the hospice where Claire had volunteered and asked more questions, this time with the photo in my bag and a trembling voice that tried to sound steady. The nurse who had told me about the accident recognized the face right away. She liked to knit for the patients, she said. She used to leave little scarves by the doors. She once read an entire book aloud because the power went out. Her voice filled the room like a heater. Her eyes were soft when she said it, and I could tell it wasn't just memory, it was affection. She offered to show me a box of things the hospice had kept: bookmarks, small thank you notes, a lopsided paper crown from a holiday party. There was a list of volunteers and, next to Claire's name, a phone number scratched in a hurried hand. It was old, and it no longer worked. But the list came with stories. The nurse told me Claire had been the kind of person who remembered the name of the woman at the corner bakery and what she liked in her coffee. The garden bench had been named after her for a while. They'd pinned a small plaque there that read, "For Claire, who left us kinder." Leaving the hospice with the photocopied list tucked into my purse felt like stepping out of a church service and into the blazing light of a summer street. Outside, I sat on the bench for a long time, holding Claire's name in my mouth, tasting it like a foreign word. The world around me continued. A bus hissed, a dog pulled on its leash, 2 teenagers laughed on the corner. Inside, my thoughts kept returning to a strange, private image of my husband folding Claire's sweater and placing it in a chair as if he had been marking time in fabric. I followed other threads. A librarian remembered Claire checking out books on philosophy and wildlife. A barista remembered a woman with paint on her fingers who once gave out free sketches at a city fair. One of the theater programs I'd found in Daniel's box had a cast list, and Claire's name was handwritten next to a small role. The image that emerged was of someone alive with curiosity, someone who gave in small, careful ways. Then I met Claire's sister. Her name was Emily, and she owned a tiny flower shop that smelled like thyme and old paper. When I pushed open the door, a bell chimed, and Emily looked up with those same kind eyes in the photograph. She was older than I'd expected, with laugh lines that landed around her mouth like map creases. For a moment she just stood there, studying me, then reached across the counter and said, "You've come about Claire, haven't you? It's a delicate thing, asking a stranger about the dead. It feels like touching a bruise." Emily didn't flinch. Instead, she poured me tea and told me things I hadn't known to ask. Claire wasn't just someone Daniel had loved, she was someone who lived loudly in small ways. She painted murals in the children's ward. She taught a weekly poetry circle at the hospice. She wrote letters to soldiers and sent care packages to campers in summer programs. She used to say the world needed more repair people than architects. Emily laughed, and then the laughter broke into something softer. When she died, it took part of everything with it. I tried to find the practical details, the accident, the funeral, the days that followed. Emily answered in fits and starts. "There was an intersection with a broken streetlight," she said. "A late night, rain. A truck, it was a terrible day." Her fingers traced the rim of the teacup like she could shape the memory into something smaller. "We all wondered how he kept going," she said. Daniel went silent for a long time. He dropped out of things. He wrote a lot. "Did he write to her?" I asked, my voice smaller than I intended. Emily looked down and then away, like the question had scratched a place on the table. "Yes," she said finally. "Letters. He left some with us once. We read a few, only because it felt cruel not to know what he was feeling. They were like," she stopped, searching for a word. "Like someone talking to memory. He could have folded into himself and disappeared. Instead, he kept showing up." That phrase, "he kept showing up," sat with me long after I left the flower shop. It was evidence and a kind of answer. Love, even when cracked, had been an action for him. It wasn't always the kind of action that wanted to be seen. Sometimes it was tending to a garden, showing up to work, putting a note in a jacket. That knowledge made me ache and soften something that felt raw inside me. Emily handed me an envelope before I left. "I don't know if Daniel told you," she said, "but Claire left something for him. She made us promise not to give it to him unless he asked. But if someone should find it, if you find it, then maybe he needed you to see what he couldn't say." My hands went cold as the words settled. "It's in that box over there." Emily nodded toward a shelf under the counter. I opened it and found a small, battered tin box. Inside was a folded piece of paper with Claire's handwriting, a note addressed to someone named Daniel. The note was short, so short it was almost like a whisper. "If you ever keep me here in memory, keep me kind. Don't let my absence steal your life away." It wasn't a declaration of romantic claim. It read as an instruction to live, a plea for the living to move forward. The tenderness in those words made my chest sear. Claire, who didn't know me but who had somehow known the man I'd married enough to ask him to keep living. By the time I left Emily's shop, the day had thickened into late afternoon. I walked through the city feeling like a person moving through someone else's diary, finding margins of sentences that belonged to lives intersecting with mine. I thought about the letter I'd found in our drawer, the drafts in his old email, the Polaroids in the attic. Each piece was a shard that, when fitted together, told a story of love, loss, and survival. That night I set the photograph of Claire on the kitchen counter where Daniel would see it. I didn't mean it to be a test. I wanted him to notice, yes, but I also wanted him to know I had seen. When he came home, he paused at the sight of the photo. There was a strange combination of recognition and regret in his face, and for once there were no words between us that could soften it. "Did you talk to Emily?" he asked. "Yes." My voice was steady. "She gave me something." He closed his eyes and exhaled as if someone had finally opened a window in a room that had been closed too long. "Claire wrote to me," he said quietly. "She left that to me when she was scared. Saying if anything ever happened, to live. She wanted me to keep living. I thought I was doing that. I thought I was honoring her by moving forward. But I never realized how much I was hiding." He reached for my hand on the table in a gesture that was both apology and plea. "I did it because I wanted to be whole for you," he said. "I wanted to be only yours." I wanted to ask him whether being whole meant wiping the slate clean, erasing the traces of someone who had shaped him. Instead, I told him about the photograph, about the note Emily had given me. He listened without interruption, and when I finished he didn't look away. He simply nodded. "Thank you for finding her," he whispered. "Thank you for not walking away when this looked like betrayal. I know it could have. I'm sorry I kept it from you." The apology was small and huge at once. It carried weight not because the words were heavy, but because they came from a man who had been practiced in silence. For a moment I felt something inside me shift, a fracture sealing with the slow work of understanding. Then, as if drawn by the final pull of curiosity, I asked the question that had been gnawing, "Did you ever keep something else? A secret, maybe something you thought would break us?" Daniel's eyes darkened, and for a heartbeat I thought he was going to say no. Instead, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a thin, folded paper I hadn't seen before. It was not the letter I'd found. This was newer, fresh edges, a stamp I didn't recognize. He swallowed. "There might be one more thing," he said. something I never told anyone. I was ashamed, and I thought hiding it would make me better. I didn't want it to define you. I didn't want it to define us." He hesitated, and I felt the air collect like a held breath. Whatever it was, it would change the shape of what I thought I knew next. And in the quiet kitchen with Claire's photograph in the lamplight, I realized our life had not just been a straight line but a braided rope, each strand woven through the other, each secret a knot waiting to be untied. I didn't yet know whether untying it would free us or unravel everything. When Daniel said, "There might be one more thing," something inside me locked up. It was like standing at the edge of a dark tunnel. You can't see what's inside, but you know once you step forward, there's no turning back. He looked at the paper in his hands like it was heavier than it should be, his thumb running over the edges the way nervous people fidget with a wedding ring. My heart pounded so loudly I could almost hear it echo in the quiet of our kitchen. He didn't hand it to me right away. He sat down first, rubbed his face with both hands, and took a long breath before speaking. "What I'm about to tell you," he said slowly, "is something I never wanted you to carry. It wasn't about hiding Claire anymore, it was about hiding me." I felt the chair press against my back as if the world had tilted. I tried to keep my voice steady. "What do you mean hiding you?" He looked up at me then, eyes filled with a kind of regret I'd never seen in anyone before. "When Claire died," he said, "I wasn't just broken, I was guilty. The accident, it wasn't only her fault. I was driving." The air went out of me. For a second, all I could hear was the hum of the refrigerator and the faint buzz of the streetlights outside. He swallowed hard and kept going, his voice quieter now. "We'd argued that night. It was something small, stupid. I was angry, distracted." She reached over to touch my arm, and I wasn't watching the road. The truck came from nowhere. I closed my eyes, but the image formed anyway, a flash of headlights, a scream swallowed by the dark, the sound of metal twisting. He was crying now, his shoulders shaking the way a man cries when he's held something in too long. "They said it wasn't my fault," he whispered. "The police, her family, they said it was an accident. But it was my fault. At least part of it. I never forgave myself. I didn't move. I didn't speak. My husband, the man I'd built a life with, raised children with, the man I thought I knew better than anyone, had been carrying this enormous, invisible weight, buried beneath the laughter and the routines and the gentle way he held me when I couldn't sleep. Every time I looked at you," he said, "I told myself I could be different. That I could start over. That I could finally love someone without the shadow of that night standing behind me." He let out a small, broken laugh. "But guilt doesn't fade. It just changes shape." He pushed the folded paper across the table toward me. My hands trembled as I picked it up. It wasn't the same as the old letter I'd found in the drawer. This one was addressed to me. My name, written in the same shaky handwriting, but dated only 5 years ago. I unfolded it slowly. It was short. Only a few lines. "If you ever find this, it means I couldn't carry it anymore. I've spent every day trying to make up for a mistake that can never be undone. I wanted to tell you the truth, but I was afraid that once you saw the man I was, you'd stop seeing the man I've tried to become." The paper blurred as tears filled my eyes. I didn't realize I was crying until one drop fell and smeared the ink. I reached across the table and touched his hand. It was shaking. I whispered, "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" "Because," he said, "I didn't think I deserved the life I got after that night. You were everything good that happened after the worst thing I ever did. I thought if I could just keep moving, if I could just keep loving you hard enough, it would erase what came before. But guilt doesn't disappear, it only hides." I sat there, trying to understand what it meant to love someone who had killed the person they once loved. Not out of cruelty. Not out of intention. But by accident, by human imperfection. And for a strange, aching moment, I felt sorry for both of them. For Claire, whose story ended too soon. And for Daniel, who'd been living in punishment ever since. He stood up, as if the confession had physically taken something from him. "I'm not asking you to forgive me," he said. "I just needed you to finally know who I am. The whole of me. Because for 15 years, I've been pretending that night didn't happen, and I can't do that anymore." The silence that followed was unbearable. Part of me wanted to scream. To ask how he could keep something so huge from me. Another part just wanted to hold him, to take away even a fraction of that pain. But I couldn't do either. I just sat there, staring at the man who had built me a home, given me children, made me laugh, and now shattered everything I thought I understood about him. When I finally spoke, my voice sounded far away, like it belonged to someone else. "You loved her," I said. "You killed her. And you still carried enough love inside you to love me. How am I supposed to hold all of that?" He didn't answer. He couldn't. He just nodded, as if he'd been asking himself the same question for 15 years. That night I lay in bed next to him, both of us wide awake but pretending to sleep. I could hear the small, uneven rhythm of his breathing. There were no words left to say. Every sentence would only dig deeper into the wound that had already been opened. Around midnight, I got up and walked to the living room. The moonlight touched the photograph of Claire still sitting on the counter. For the first time, I didn't feel jealous of her. I felt something closer to grief, a strange, shared grief that belonged to all three of us. I sat there until the sky began to pale, until exhaustion pressed down on my eyelids. Before I went back to bed, I whispered into the quiet, "I know you didn't mean to. But I don't know if I can ever unsee it." When I returned to our room, Daniel was awake, eyes open, staring at the ceiling. We didn't speak. We just lay there, caught between love and the kind of silence that feels like it might last forever. The next morning, he was gone. Not forever. Just gone for a drive. He left a note on the kitchen table. "I need to see the road again. The one where it happened. I need to stop being afraid of it." I stood there, holding the note, realizing he was chasing closure. But I wasn't sure whether closure would heal him, or break us completely. He left in the early gray, taking the car without saying much, like a man who needed the road to carry the parts of himself he couldn't carry inside the house. I stood by the window and watched him go, the taillights shrinking, thinking about the way we sometimes use distance as a kind of medicine, believing if we put enough miles between the wound and the skin, it will stop aching. I made coffee and sat at the table with Claire's photograph in front of me. People tell you, in books and films, that grief is a private thing everyone carries the same way. It isn't true. Grief grows different in different bodies. For some it cratered him, for some it layered over the years like varnish. For me, the feeling was more like an electric current under the floorboards, impossible to ignore once you knew it was there. Hours passed. The children called small, ordinary things that kept our normal life moving forward, and my answers were automatic. It felt strange, performing the day's small rituals while the foundation we'd built shifted under us. I could have gone after him. I could have called and demanded he come home so we could fix it. But I also knew this part of his story had to be faced on his own terms. People who have been carrying guilt for a long time need to walk out into the cold and feel it on their skin to know it's real. When he came back, the car smelled like rain and old roads. He was quieter than before, with a kind of exhausted openness. He sat down at the table and pushed a small folded map across toward me. There were notes in the margin, times, names, a line about stop by hospice. The map was a breadcrumb trail of someone trying to find themselves again. He told me what had happened. How he had driven the route to the intersection, how he had walked that stretch of road until his feet ached. How he had stood where he remembered the scrape of metal and the smell of gasoline and let himself replay it until the memory stopped looking like a movie and began to look like a wound that could be cleaned. He had spoken to the truck driver, who remembered the night differently, to the officer who had investigated, to a man who had seen Claire's car drift and tried to stop it. None of it lessened the sorrow, he said. But the road had given him a place to lay down some of the questions. Seeing it didn't make it smaller, he said, but it made it real. When things are stories in your head, they can become monsters. Seeing the place, hearing someone else's memory, those were human voices. They told me I wasn't the only witness. That helped. He looked up at me with that tired, honest look I had learned to read, the one that meant he was trying to be as whole as he could. We talked for a long time that night, not in accusations but in slow, careful sentences that tried to stitch the present to the past without tearing it. He told me things I needed to hear, the way he'd kept that sweater because it smelled like rain, the way he'd gone back to the hospice to volunteer for a year because he'd felt closer to her there. The nights when the only thing that kept him breathing was the small ritual of making the bed in the dark. He showed me scars I hadn't known existed, pieces of him that bore the mark of loss. I told him, too, about the fear I'd felt when I found the letter. I said how it made me feel like someone had given me a half-read book and expected me to love the story without knowing the beginning. He listened as if every word mattered. And when I finished he took my hands in his and said, "I'm sorry." Not the quick apology you give to smooth a small hurt, but the kind that wants to spend years earning its shape. "I don't know if I can forgive this in a single night," I said honestly. "But I want to try. I want you to know everything, and I want to know everything too. I don't want secrets to be the foundation of us." Saying that felt like opening a window I had kept shut for too long. We made decisions then, practical, small, human. We would go to therapy. He agreed to tell our children the truth in a way we would choose together, not as a confession thrown at the feet of our son when he wasn't ready. We would make a memory box, not to hide things away but to hold them openly. The box would contain Claire's photograph, the letters, the drafts, the poems, and our own letters written to each other now, as if each day we could add a new, honest page to override the silence of decades. Over the next weeks, we walked to the hospice, sat with the nurses who'd remembered her, and arranged a small, private thing where we read a few of Claire's words aloud. It was not a ceremony of closure as much as an acknowledgement, an act of naming the thing that had lived in the space between us. It felt strange and necessary, the way light feels on a scab before it heals. Sometimes the road back is not a straight line but a series of small, repetitive acts. He would say her name without flinching, and each time the sound grew less like a secret and more like a fact of life. We read the old unsent drafts aloud, and sometimes they made us weep, but other times they made us laugh at the raw, human ways he tried to hold on. I couldn't help noticing the tenderness in the drafts, the way he described small domestic things that turned out to be gestures of love he later offered me, making coffee on a bleak morning, leaving a note in the mailbox. People asked us if keeping the memory of Claire alive would always be part of our marriage. At first I bristled at the thought, imagining a third presence that would never leave. But then I began to think of it differently. Instead of a third person between us, Claire became a part of his history that I could honor without feeling diminished. Loving someone who once loved another isn't a subtraction, it's a widening. The house of our life held more rooms, not fewer. We had hard days. There were moments when he would look at me as if measuring whether my love could bear the size of his past. There were moments when I would feel absurdly jealous of a ghost. In those times, we learned to talk about the jealousy without shame, to sit with the discomfort and name it. Gradually, the rawness dulled into a steady ache that reminded us of fragility rather than betrayal. One afternoon, months later, our daughter found the tin box we had set on the shelf. She was small and curious, a girl who loved to peek into drawers and find secrets adults thought were hidden. She asked us about the photograph and the letters. We sat on the floor with her between us and told a version of the story we could all carry, simple, honest, age-appropriate. She touched Claire's photograph and asked if Claire had liked strawberries. We laughed through tears and said yes. Her innocence offered something like redemption. When she asked what it meant to love more than once, Daniel said, with a softness that felt like healing, "It means our heart can learn how to hold more than one story. It learns to be bigger." The way she nodded, as if it was the most obvious thing in the world, reminded me that sometimes the purest wisdom lives in the smallest people. In the years since, our life did not return to the pre-letter version. It became a different kind of ordinary, one that included memory openly, like a photograph on the mantle. We kept that tin box on a shelf, a visible piece of our history. On quiet nights, when the house was quiet and the children were asleep, we would read the old drafts and the letters and the notes we wrote to each other afterward, like two people who had made a messy promise to keep being honest. Here is what I learned through all of it, and what I want to say to anyone who ever finds a secret tucked into a drawer: secrets are not always betrayals. Sometimes they are a kind of trembling that people carry until they find a way to speak. But secrets have power because they shape the life you share. If you find one, you have a choice: to let it live between you like a shadow, or to bring it into the light and see what it becomes. I chose light. It didn't fix everything overnight. There were seasons when the wound ached and nights when anger rose up like a tide. But there were also mornings when I would watch him make coffee with a careful, habitual kindness and feel gratitude that our life had the capacity to include both grief and joy. We still keep Claire's photograph. We read the letter sometimes, and it no longer feels like a threat. It's a trace of truth that taught us how to speak more honestly. And on days when I think of the moment I first found that envelope, I realize how fragile and brave we all are, how much courage it takes to live in a way that tells the whole story. If there's one last thing I could leave you with, it's this: love is not a place where you can demand perfection. It's a place where we ask for truth. Give it to each other, even when the truth is ugly, even when it's heavy. Because the life built on honesty, no matter how cracked by grief, has the chance to be whole in a way that's stronger than silence. And if you ever find a letter in a drawer, open it. Don't close off the possibility that behind pain there might be a person who needs to be known. Sit down, breathe, and choose a new kind of bravery, the bravery to speak and to listen. Who on earth keeps going? We do. We are.